Yo guys, what's happening? It's your boy DBK here, and just back with a little, I don't know, soliloquy if you call it that. So yeah, I just was thinking about, you know, my little sister and stuff like that, and yeah, she's in school. She's like, about to take her GCSEs, etc., etc. So she's at that age where she has to choose topics and stuff like that, or subjects or whatever. The schooling system in the UK may be a bit different from in Europe or across the world, but basically what we have is we have a system where you go to nursery or a baby school, I guess, until you're about 4 or 5 years old, and then you go into primary school. The first year you enter is called reception, which is I think from 4 to 5 years, and it goes from reception to year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and then year 6 is your final year of primary school. And by the end of that, you should be 11 years old. And then from there, you go on to secondary school, and secondary school follows a similar format to primary school. It goes from year 7, 8, 9, 10 to 11. And by the end of year 11, you should be 16 years old. But we have a series of exams partway through that start in the year 9, called the GCSEs. I've like been through the whole system and stuff, and I still don't know what that stands for. So yeah, but it's GCSEs. That's what it's known as. It's known as a set of exams that we take between the years of year 9 and year 11 to determine what we can go on to do for further education in college. Now, since I've left school, it's changed a bit. After year 11, well, the system, let me explain it. So after year 11, you either go to college, which is another further 2 years, or you go to what is called sixth form, which is basically, it's pretty much college, but still in the school environment. College is its own thing on itself. It's like its own sort of establishment, but it's still in the learning sphere. But it's not part of a school. It's not attached to a school, whereas sixth form is attached to a school. So you do the GCSEs to determine where you're gonna take your A levels. So the exams that you take in sixth form in college, or run up to your A levels, which are another set of exams. And then your A levels determine what you can go and do in university, which is after sixth form and college. And based on whatever you did in your A levels, you can go on to university and do whatever you want to do, etc., etc. So that's where the basic primary education system in the UK is. Now, when I was in school, it wasn't mandatory for you to have to do college or sixth form. Like after you finished year 11, so after you were 16, that was it. Your education, your mandatory education had finished, and you didn't have to go on to college or go into sixth form even. Sorry. But as I understand now, the rules have changed, and college or sixth form or an apprenticeship are all mandatory. So effectively, students can't finish school until they are at least 18 years of age. So they have to stay in education until 18, whereas I only had to stay until 16. Which, if you think about it, it can be debated from both sides. It can be debated as a good thing or as a bad thing. I personally see it as a bad thing because what happened with me is I went on to try sixth form, even though I had no real aspirations. In school, I wasn't the most studious, and to this day, I'm not a massive proponent of the schooling system. But I went on to sixth form, and I pretty much dropped out before the first year had even finished. So I was out of sixth form by the time I was 17. And if I had been part of this new system, I would have been forced to be or stay in sixth form, or would have been forced to go to college. In the end, what I did is I went on an apprenticeship, an IT apprenticeship. So that sort of saved my bacon in a way, because I still got qualifications by the end of, the 2 year mandatory term. So by the time I was 18, I had gotten, a diploma and other qualifications, etc., which I would have got if I was still in sixth form or I'd been in college. So it just basically reduced the time. But like I said, it can be battled from either side. People can say, yeah, it's a good thing, 'cause at least it ensures that kids are staying in school till they're 18. But it's all good and well that we have kids staying in school till they're 18. Gives kids a sense of security, and it lets them feel like they still have some place to go or something to do with their time up until the time of 18, when they have to finally make decisions for themselves. But my point and talking point for today is potentially reforming some of the way that schools enact, and I think I might do another video on this. But for the first video, I'm going to talk about life skills within school teaching. Now, I'm not going to be the first person to say this, I'm not going to be the last person to say this, but I really, really do think that the school system needs a big reform in a way that it teaches about life and in a way that it sets people up for the future. I feel it doesn't do enough at all. And this is just me coming from my personal experience. Maybe they have, switched up the system as of recently. But I can only talk on what, I know and what I have done and what I've been through personally. I can't speak for anybody else's shoes. So I believe that, there should be at least an hour a week dedicated from potentially maybe the year 9 onwards. I don't know, you can start earlier. But I do think that life skills need to be taught. Essential skills for life need to be taught in school. Now, we have a lot of hogwash in school, and a lot of people might find what I say to be in bad taste, but I find that we have a lot of useless subjects in school nowadays. And subjects such as dance and drama, I feel they are not really legitimate topics worthy of being given GCSE certification. I don't think that is something that is, an essential life skill. I can understand 3 core, which everyone call them the 3 core subjects, which is science, maths, and English. Pretty much we will need some of the skills that we learn in them to a degree in later life, or just to give us an understanding of life. But things that aren't essential, such as dance, being taught, and drama, and the lack of proper sex education in school is a reason why some people may say that we have a teen pregnancy epidemic in this country. Now, looking at other countries, you may see why we have an epidemic, or why we call it an epidemic. But there are a few countries that are worse than us, notably Argentina, but that doesn't mean that we're not as bad as ourselves. So we do need to take that on board. But things such as rent, mortgages, bills, saving, all of these things are essential life skills that none of us are taught in school. We used to have this stupid little dead subject like PSHE, where they used to just literally be, a time for resting if anyone needed to catch up on some lost sleep. And I don't know, maybe PSHE was actually meant to cover these things, but it never was. And it never did. It never really covered any of the stuff here. It just covered like stupid crap like stranger danger, as if we don't know, because we've been, had that stuff thrown down our throats since primary school, not to talk to strangers or take sweets or jump in big silver vans with scary creepy men with mustaches and stuff like that. We've been taught that from young, but what we haven't been taught is how life actually works after we leave school. Now, I know a lot of people that are my age in university now, friends of mine or old friends in university now, that are sitting on 30k worth of debt because they don't understand budgeting, they don't understand saving, they don't understand how loans work, and they are going to be riddled with these things for a long time in their lives. For the next 30-40 years they're going to spend paying this stuff off. And to me, it seems like if we had a bit more education on the topic of life skills, such as, understanding what, an ISA is, or understanding the difference between debit and credit cards. You know, you might think that this is common knowledge, but it really, really isn't. As we see so many times, we see so many people fall into the traps of these really awful and pretty much, I feel that they're kind of unethical. These payday loan people. You know what I mean? These guys are absolutely ruthless in their tactics, and they're ruthless with their advertising. We see it everywhere. It's the same as gambling. That you can take 300 and pay it back at the end of the month, etc., etc. But what people don't understand is the ramifications that taking at 300 quid from Wonga or whatever one of these other dudes do. It is a big thing, and it scars people for life. There are people that have, recently been, killing themselves because of this stuff. And when it gets to the point where people are killing themselves because they cannot handle the stress and the pressure of being under such debt, and being under such, such a force that is, putting them in a position where they're contemplating suicide, you have to understand and talk about these issues. And I think that, a lot of these things could be prevented if we start the teaching from home. Our first thing that we should be doing when we're teaching our kids is, how do mum and dad, or, how do people live and, work and have food on the table and keep the lights on and have security and have a car? And, how do they survive from month to month? And we're only going to create more and more generations of people who are absolutely clueless with the idea of money and, saving, and we're going to create an even worse environment than what we have now, with people falling in debt, if we just choose to ignore it and choose not to address the issue. The issue that needs to be addressed is teaching children from, an age of which they'll be able to comprehend how the world works, and how, things are in the world, is that if you pay with something with a credit card, you eventually will have to pay that back. If you take out a mortgage, or if you need to buy a house, or if you want to rent a house, tell them the things that go along with it. Notify them about things like council tax, TV licensing. Even these small things, people don't really understand the concept of them and understand why they're there. You have to start teaching them to people at an age where they're going to be most receptive to information, which is during the school time or during their school years. And seriously, it will help future generations become a bit more, educated, in a sense of they will understand how to save money. If we do simple things, it could be a simple activity with buttons, where people are holding buttons, and, you got about 10 buttons, but 2 of the buttons have to go for rent, 1 button for water, 1 button for, electricity. And then, just dividing them and getting them to use simple mathematics to understand how to budget themselves, and not how to blow all their buttons or whatever on one thing. It's a really simple concept, something that can just be, it can even be done in primary schools if you're that, need to do it that much. But I just believe that we at least need to start teaching in schools the basics of how the world really works. I think a lot of people leave school clueless as to how the world works. I think people just think that they'll walk into a job, and when they have that job, they get paid, maybe a grand or a grand and a half a month, and they'll just spend and spend and spend and spend, and then when they might get made redundant, they actually have nothing, and they're living off scraps, and they're potentially going to get evicted from their flat that they're renting, or they're going to lose the car because they can't afford to pay road tax or something. You know what I mean? Really simple things that happen to people. We just need to educate and teach people what to do with money, how to use your money, how to budget properly, to prevent more and more people sliding down the slippery slope that is debt. And yeah, that's just, I might do another video on a similar topic as such, but I feel that this is something that we at least need to cover as people. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear other people's ideas on this too. And until later, I'm gonna catch you guys in a bit. Peace.